Hi, I'm Rob.
And I'm Rob.
And this is Ask Rob and Rob.
Welcome to Ask Rob and Rob. It's that time again. We've got more questions and more answers coming up. We've got a couple of really interesting ones this week. So we're not going to leave you waiting long till you can hear those. But it is worth, first of all, giving you a quick reminder of how to send in your own wonderful question.
Yes, you can go to our lovely shiny website, propertyhub.net/ask, and leave a message there. Or you can call this very special number, which will then mean that in the office, a big red phone will light up and no one will answer and it'll get sent to a voicemail. But that's all you need to do. You call 013-808-00035 and you will get to that very special voicemail. And that's the process Geoff has just followed. So let's listen to Geoff's question.
Hey, Rob and Rob. Hope you're well. Geoff here. Thank you for all the content. It's always fantastic. Quick question. So I was going to invest in property and my plans have been put on hold. My cash is in a lifetime ISA. And so I'm wondering what instrument I should invest in whilst I'm waiting for maybe a year. I'm thinking just about a multi-asset fund or maybe some REITs or maybe some inflation-linked short-term government bonds, UK-based. So I just wanted to get your thoughts really on what are good sort of holding positions for your cash whilst you're waiting for your pot to build up so it keeps its purchasing power. All right, thanks a lot.
Thank you, Geoff. Good question. Tough question as well. Because from what you've said, it sounds like your plans to invest in property have been put on hold for a reason other than cash. So it's not that you don't have enough cash and you want to grow it particularly, but you just need something to do with your cash for a year or however long it takes you to get investing again. But understandably, you don't want to just have it sitting around as cash, because then it's just going to lose purchasing power against inflation. And if property prices continue to grow, then you're going to be able to buy less property with the same amount of money. The issue that you've got is that any kind of investment is going to be unstable over the short term. So if you're looking at a 5-year or a 10-year time horizon, the type of things that you can invest in are going to be completely different from what you can invest in over a year. Because in the stock market or even in the bond market, in anything, over a year's time, anything could happen. You could lose 10% or 20% or more of your money tomorrow. But over a longer period of time, that's okay because it gives time for it to come back. And history tells us that over the long run, you come out ahead. So that produces a real challenge for you. So while I'm not in a position to give financial advice, but if it was me and I wanted to make sure that in a year's time I was pretty certain of having exactly as much money as I have today, then I wouldn't be putting it in the stock market. I wouldn't even be putting it into REITs, because even though you might have stable rental income, anything can happen over a year. I wouldn't be putting it into bond funds, because while the coupons paid by those bonds may be stable, the capital value of them isn't. So what options does that leave you with? Well, not many. So if it really is the case that you want to be certain of having that money in a year's time, I really do think it's just a case of finding the least worst savings account that you can. And if you've got enough money for it to make it worth your time doing this, you can split it between multiple accounts. You can drip it into regular savers for higher interest rates. There's things you can do to make the rate of return a little bit less bad, but it's still going to be bad. But that's the price that you pay for certainty. If you're willing to take on some risk, then you've got lots more options. But whatever you do, you are taking on risk. So the way I look at this is, if you really want to invest in property, that's what you ultimately want to be doing, then that's the thing that you have to prioritize. And you believe that that's the investment that you want to make for the future, and that's what's going to end up doing best for you over the long term. If that's the case, then you just need to almost literally pay a price for keeping your money safe for the next year so you can do that. You could pursue something else now to make more money in the meantime, and that could work out really well. But it could also end up not working out well and actually preventing you from making the investment you want when you want to. So I wish I could give a really great answer that says, oh yeah, there's this asset class that you haven't thought about and that'll be perfect for you. That's not the case. But hopefully by thinking about this over the long term, it's going to be a bit less painful for you to just have cash sitting on the sidelines. And I hope that you'll be able to get investing as soon as possible.
Good luck, Geoff. Okay, next up, we've got a question in from Ian.
Hi gents, my name's Ian. I'm calling from Sutton in Ashfield, which is just outside of Nottingham. I've got a question regarding quantitative easing, please. So I understand, having listened to your podcast recently, how quantitative easing is money, or more money being produced by the government and kind of put into the economy and the effect that has. The bit that I can't quite get my head around is how does that money actually find its way into the economy? I understand that Bank of England can produce more money and they want to put that into the economy, but how do they do so? Is it given to the banks and then the banks buy bonds and somehow that then trickles money into the economy? I understand the theory about it, but I don't understand quite how the money hits the economy. They're definitely not giving it me. I don't imagine they're giving it to people or businesses, but there must be a way that when they sort of produce that money, how does it actually get to the economy? So I'd love to find out more about that, if you could help with that. Thank you very much.
Ian, great question. And I completely understand why you're asking the question, because QE on a high level, it's kind of easy to understand, right? The government creates money, puts it into the economy, asset prices go up. But how does it work? Well, it depends on what government is creating the money, because the US government approaches this slightly different to the UK. But I'm going to assume that it's the UK that you're focused on because you've referenced the Bank of England. So let's give you the answer for the UK. So historically, the UK, when it comes to quantitative easing, the government buys bonds. Therefore, the returns that the bonds offer are reduced. And because the government has purchased so much in the way of bonds, and those returns become very unattractive for those with capital, the capital then goes into different areas and different asset classes, most importantly. So it forces the banks not to sit on their own cash because they can't get returns from where they would normally leave it. So in effect, what the government does is it doesn't actually put the money directly into the banks. It forces the banks to do things like lending or investing. And that's how they've done it historically. But more recently, they've had a change of heart, a change of direction. And I think it's really interesting in what they've done and how they've approached this.
Yes, because under the method that Rob's just described, how does the money get into the economy? Well, it gets into the economy in terms of it affects assets, and then that's supposed to trickle down in some kind of way. But that method is very indirect. And a select committee of the House of Lords actually criticised the Bank of England earlier this year by saying that this QE had done wonders for asset prices, but hadn't actually done a lot as far as they could see in terms of what it was supposed to be doing, which is increasing activity and consumer price inflation in the real economy. But that did change in 2020. You've said, well, what are they doing with it? They're not giving it to me. Well, they kind of are now. In that what was happening before was that they were going out and buying bonds that were already out there in the market. So they were reducing the supply of these bonds that were out there in exactly the way that Rob talked about. But in 2020, as a result of COVID, the government started issuing a lot more bonds because the government suddenly needed a lot of money to pay for furlough and various other schemes that is going to mitigate the effects of the lockdowns. As a result, the amount of QE that the Bank of England was doing almost exactly matched the amount of new bonds that were being issued by the government. So when you think it through, there was a middleman in there. They were still buying the bonds from financial institutions rather than from the government, but they almost may as well have been buying them directly from the government. So as a result, that new money was going to people and businesses. It was going to businesses in the forms of grants and loans to keep them going. It was going to people via the furlough scheme. So even though the QE mechanism was actually the same, the fact that they were acting in concert with the Treasury meant that the effect of that was very different. So rather than just affecting asset prices, it ended up in the real economy where it could affect consumer prices. And indeed, coming out on the other side of COVID, there are lots of people who've got far more savings than they did before who want to go out and spend them, and that could well be inflationary. So it's all quite technical. It sounds quite boring. It sort of is quite boring, but it's actually really important as well. So I'm glad you asked the question, Ian, because it's well worth understanding the effect that QE has had historically and the slightly different effect that it may have now.
Well, that's us done for another week. We'll be back with the Property Podcast on Thursday. And of course, back with Ask Rob and Rob next Tuesday. So until then, take care, have fun. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.